What's going on, you guys? Welcome back to the SFS channel. My name's Gavin, and today I've got some fantasy football lineup advice for you guys for NFL Week 11 action. We are winding down here in the fantasy season, and the playoffs are rapidly approaching, so each game means more and more the farther we get here in the season. So today I've got 5 must-start wide receivers for you guys for this week's NFL games. And if you haven't already, before I get into today's video, make sure each and every single one of you guys has gone down and hit the subscribe button to my channel. It really helps me out, and once we get to that 1,000 subscriber mark, I'm going to be giving away 10 draft guides for the 2021 season to you guys, my subscribers, absolutely free, just for the support you guys have shown me the last few months here. It's been amazing, and I hope to keep growing as a community. So let's not waste any more time. Let's get into the 5 players to start, and let's hit the intro. All right, my first wide receiver to go out and start in Week 11 is Tyler Lockett, the Seattle Seahawks number 2 option. He is seemingly taking a step back to DK Metcalf in that offense, but don't get confused here. Tyler Lockett is still an elite level fantasy producer and a guy that can put up huge numbers for your team. Despite having 3 quiet-ish games the last few weeks, Tyler Lockett is still wide receiver 6 in fantasy, and DK Metcalf is wide receiver 2. This is an offense that produces high-level fantasy scores. Obviously, Russell Wilson is there as well, and Chris Carson when he comes back from injury. So lots of things to like in that Seattle offense. But this week, Tyler Lockett returns to play the Cardinals, who the last time we saw him on the field against the Cardinals put up 15 grabs for 200 yards and 3 touchdowns. Tyler Lockett had his best day of his career that week, and he's in for another big game here. I think Tyler Lockett is certainly going to see some regression from that last game, but he is still definitely going to be a guy to pencil into your lineups. Patrick Peterson is going to be shadowing DK Metcalf around on the field, and Tyler Lockett is going to have things open up for him tremendously. Last game, they could not cover Tyler Lockett to save their lives. This guy was running wide open all over the place and making ridiculous catches. I think Tyler Lockett will get back over 100 yards this week, and I think he is a safe bet to score a touchdown as well. Justin Jefferson is my next wide receiver you guys need to go out and start this week. Jefferson was starting to trend down after the Vikings became extremely run-heavy, notably against the Lions, and then following into that next game against the Packers. But this past week against the Chicago Bears, who did not let Cook run over 200 yards for the first time in a couple weeks there against them, the Vikings were forced to throw the ball more. Even on Kirk Cousins' limited throwing attempts, was still able to be the primary guy in that offense and rack in 8 grabs for 135 yards against a very tough defensive unit. Jefferson had one heck of a day, and he didn't even get in the end zone. Adam Thielen was the scorer in that game. He had 2 touchdowns on 4 catches for 43 yards. So I think in terms of volume, we're seeing Justin Jefferson start to take that push ahead of Adam Thielen in that Vikings offense. But he is definitely a guy who, when he scores, is going to put up big weeks as well. 135 yards against a defense, the tier of the Bears, is very, very good. That unit is solid from top to bottom. And for Minnesota, a team that has a bad offensive line, being able to throw the football that well against Chicago is impressive because the pass protection was able to hold up and Justin Jefferson was still able to make things happen. So I really like him again this week against the Cowboys. Dallas has been bashed all year long for having a terrible defense top to bottom, but I actually saw in their last game before the bye week, Dallas up front looked better. They had some young guys getting playing time instead of those veterans that they cut, and there was some juice up front. James Conner was held in check and shut down. The Steelers' run game was not that effective, and so I think that while Dalvin Cook is certainly more talented than Conner, he's still going to have a nice day, but I don't think he's going to have a ridiculous performance. Cook will get his carries, Cook will get his numbers, but I don't expect him to be running at free will against the Cowboys, so I think Minnesota is still going to have to throw. And honestly, if you're the Vikings coaching staff and you don't game plan to throw the football in this game, you're doing yourself a disservice. That Cowboys secondary is the worst in the league in my opinion, and their primary ball hawk, Trayvon Diggs, is injured right now. For a secondary that is as bad and thin at corner and safety as the Cowboys are, they would be foolish not to throw the football to their star first-round pick at wide receiver. Justin Jefferson can bully these guys and have a massive day. So Justin Jefferson needs to be in lineups this week. He's a very safe play and a guy I think can have an enormous week. My next must-start wide receiver here is Amari Cooper, the Dallas Cowboys top wideout. And this is a guy I'm not all that thrilled about going forward the rest of the season, and a player that has struggled earlier on this year with the quarterback play, and a guy that I've had trending down for a long time now. But Cooper this week has a matchup that's too good to pass on, and I think that he has shown some signs of life last week, or in his last game, before the bye week against Pittsburgh. Against Pittsburgh with a fourth-string quarterback, if you will, Ben DiNucci being the third-string guy, and then Garrett Gilbert being the fourth stringer. Amari Cooper had 5 grabs for 67 yards and actually looked like he might be used in that offense again moving forward. Andy Dalton will actually be returning in Week 11. Coach Mike McCarthy said that he is on track and looking good to play that game against the Vikings, so that helps Cooper's value tremendously. Cooper will be matched up on top of a weak secondary that is missing a couple guys on top of that. I think that he has a chance for a very high ceiling this week. He's still not the safest play in the world, but a guy that's upside I think outweighs that floor. So I would go start Amari Cooper if you're looking for a wideout in Week 11. DJ Chark is another guy that gets the nod again for me this week. And he is a player last week who I thought actually underperformed. I had him on my start list, and the weather in Green Bay last week was awful. Their quarterback, Luton, was underthrowing Chark and cost him a huge touchdown that would have broke games open in fantasy. DJ Chark ran straight past the Green Bay secondary. They were missing their top 2 corners, and it was a great matchup. It looked like everything was set up for a big afternoon for Chark. And then Luton just kind of noodle-armed it up into the middle of the field. Chark had about 7 to 10 yards of cushion between him and the defender, and by the time the ball got there, the defender had caught up and was able to swat it away. So Chark left a lot of points hanging on the board last week. He definitely could have added another 10 to 12 fantasy points. It was like a 45, 50-yard bomb. So DJ Chark, a guy I think has tremendous value in that offense and is clearly the one for the Jags. And this week he's got Pittsburgh at home, so I think that the weather will not be so much of a factor this week. We actually saw 2 games last week kind of get messed up in fantasy purposes. Because of that weather, we saw Houston and Cleveland have a brutal game as well, and that wind and cold in Cleveland. But down in Jacksonville, unless they have a monsoon or a hurricane or something, should not be looking too bad there. So Jacksonville is a very nice game this week. I think that they're going to have to throw to keep up with Big Ben and the Steelers' offense. DJ Chark, obviously being the primary guy in that offense, is going to see some looks, and he's a guy I would look out for to have a touchdown. I think he's going to have a nice reception count as well and get a healthy yardage total. So I really like his floor this week and that ceiling. The Pittsburgh defense is very good up front and at getting after the passer, but they're weaker on the back end and susceptible to big plays. And big plays is what DJ Chark does best, so I think he is a great play in Week 11. My final must-start wide receiver this week is Christian Kirk, the Arizona Cardinals wideout. And after DeAndre Hopkins' huge game last week, you have to think that all attention will be focused towards number 10 this week against the Seahawks. And quite frankly, I think that's the way things were earlier this season when these teams met for the first time. Christian Kirk had 5 catches for 37 yards and 2 scores in that game, and I expect another big day from Kirk. Right now, D-Hop is arguably the best wideout in the game, so all the attention on that defense of Seattle that is already very weak on the back end, they are going to need to shift over to Hopkins' side and provide all the attention that they can afford over there to try and slow him down as much as possible, and that is going to open up things big time for Kirk, who is a guy I think sees a regression in touchdown count this week, but an increase in yards. I could see him hitting a couple home run balls over the top and having over 100 yards receiving, and if you guys are lucky, he might get in the end zone and score as well. This is a guy who excels at down-the-field plays and big chunk yardage situations. I really like Christian Kirk as a talent and as a fantasy player. I think he's a perfect start at the wide receiver 2 position or flex in your lineups this week. Before I get out of here, some honorable mentions for the week are the trio of wideouts in the Steelers offense: Juju Smith-Schuster, Chase Claypool, and Deontay Johnson. It's really hard to pick which one of these guys is going to have the best fantasy day, but I think that they all have the potential for a big one against the Jags this week. That's a young defense. They play hard and physical, but they make mental lapses, and they let up big plays down the field. I think Juju Smith-Schuster is more of your consistent guy who's going to see the most volume, the guy with the most established rapport with Big Ben, and the most dependable target. I think Chase Claypool is more of your touchdown-dependent red zone guy who doesn't see as much volume but gets some scores, and Deontay Johnson is that boom or bust player that puts up a massive outing that wins you your weeks, or the guy that crushes your heart and breaks the floor down and has an awful outing for 1 catch and 2 yards. Nonetheless, though, these guys should all be in your lineups this week. They are all very solid plays against that young Jags unit, like I said, and I like starting each one of them situationally on my teams, but I would stay away from starting all 3 of them like I know some of you guys have on your roster. Those are my top 5 wide receivers to start for Week 11 NFL action. As always, if you guys have any questions related to fantasy football, they are all welcome down in the comment section below. I'm happy to answer you guys' questions, and I want to help you guys finish this year strong and have great performances down the stretch of the year. So thank you guys as always for watching. I really appreciate each and every single one of you guys that's taking time out of your day to visit the SFS channel. And I hope you guys will stick around, hit that subscribe button, and turn the bell on so you guys are notified when I come out with a new video. So without further ado, thank you guys again. I'll see you next time. Peace out.